Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. We're back now in the new year. So happy new year to everybody. I hope everyone had lovely holidays.
Happy New
Um,
Year. I saw
yeah,
everyone last week for a minute, but yeah. So I this week, I'm glad you're back here because you can fact check my last little video. I know I accidentally said somebody was dead when they weren't.
yes, Pat Bunn.
Yeah.
That's
So
his nickname, by the way. No, he's not. The guy that was speaking is not. It's the guy that owned the land. Do you
okay.
remember we wanted to put a commemoration plaque on the actual stone to commemorate the people that had been lost down in Ballamanis
Yeah.
and to to say that the stone was a Banshee stone, and he was a bit wary about it because he didn't want people, if he ever wanted to sell the land, he didn't want people worrying about the fact that there was a Banshee
Banshees.
stone on it. Well, since then, by the way, they have actually, in the last sort of 10, 15 years, they have actually put up a plaque to
Yeah.
commemorate the people from that were lost down in Ballymena since. But yeah, there's nothing up by the actual stone. Now, I have two stories that are connected to that particular area. I really wanted to try and get over and take some photographs to show you where I was talking about, but that'll have to wait till next week because we're in full lockdown again. I'm sure you are as well in Dublin.
Yeah. Very much. We're level 5+ now at the moment.
Yeah, so
Um,
yeah, same here. So
we're not
taking a
leaving
run
the house.
like 15 miles over the road just to take photographs, I think I'd get in bother for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have two stories. I have the one that Pat Bunn was telling. Now, I mean, the story I was told, that's very similar to the one Pat Bunn told, but it was the couple were from near the banks. Now, they may have drowned outside Dunlow, I'm not sure. They were from near the banks. And the story was that she was actually appearing. There's a long stretch of road between Mulladuff and Kincastle, and it's called the Banks. And it's the loneliest, scariest stretch of road. And I believe me, since a youngster, we'd all used to run that part of the road to get past. It's so eerie. But originally, back in the day, there's now a chapel in Annigra, which is on the other side of Mulladuff. But back in the day, there only was the Kincastle Chapel. And Kincastle Chapel, I'll come back to that in a minute. So people stopped actually going to mass because the amount of sightings of this wailing woman crying at the side of the road was terrifying people. She was appearing to lots of people, and people, the people going to mass dwindled away. And the priest had to come and find out what's going on. Why are people not coming to mass? And it's because this woman keeps appearing, screaming and crying at
You're
people and
scared.
terrifying them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just one or two. It was the whole community. It's like, nearly everyone had some sort of encounter. And then it was the priest himself. He went over with another priest to investigate it, and he was on horseback, and she appeared to him.
What era or what time frame was this? Sort of like they were
Oh,
on horseback and
you'd be talking about the early 1800s.
1800s. Yeah,
Yeah. They would have been on horseback right up until the early 1900s, actually, though.
sure. Well,
But we're talking about,
they're still
yeah.
on horseback in Dublin. Some
So you're
people.
talking about the early 1800s at this stage. And the priest went over with another priest. I would assume it was a parish priest with the curate to investigate. And sure enough, she appeared to them. And now, apparently, she appeared, according to Pat Bunn, on the back of his horse. I heard from another person, they said that she appeared in front of him and the horse reared up, and that the other priest that was on the horse fell off. Now, you know yourself, all different stories. But yeah,
Hearsay.
they apparently had holy water and everything with them, and they banished her under the stone, and she was never seen or heard from again. But there is also a white lady that appears down there that was known as a banshee, the crying woman. Now, this is different.
Definitely.
Yeah, this goes back to the 1500s.
Oh,
And this goes back to the Spanish Armada whenever they set sail to battle in Britain. Well, they came round sort of a back way into England. By a lot of them were coming round the north of Ireland, northwest coast up through Donegal and going to come in through the top, the bottom of Scotland and then to England that way. And between Arnmore and Mulladuff, Mulladuff is where we're talking about. Between Arnmore and Mulladuff, there were 11 boats of the Armada were foundered, and all the passengers, well, not all, actually all the crew, there was something like about 9 or 10, I think,
survived.
managed to get ashore at Arnmore.
Mhm.
I think there might have been a few might have got ashore in Kincastle, but out of maybe about 800 men, there was only something like a dozen survivors. The seas up there, and it is
Mm.
so rough and it's so dangerous even now. Never mind back then when they wouldn't have had, you know, the navigation aids, and plus the fact most sailors didn't learn to swim because they thought
Yeah.
it was safer to just drown quickly. If you could swim, you would drown longer.
Mhm.
But yeah, because there was the ones in Arnmore, the ones that went ashore in Arnmore. I'm getting sidetracked, but the ones that went very quickly, the ones that went ashore in Arnmore were hidden by the people of Arnmore and kept there until they recovered. And then they made their way. They gave them food. They obviously couldn't give them money, but they gave them food and clothing. And they made their way onto the mainland and managed to get back to Spain. However, they managed to get back to Spain. But as a thank you to the people of Arnmore, the Queen of Spain at the time presented the King of Arnmore, there was a King of Arnmore at the time, with a set of pearls by way of thank you, with a letter of authenticity as well.
Where are those
Thanking them.
pearls now, I wonder?
Yes. Well, thanking them for, you know, helping her sailors and
Yeah.
etc. The English took possession of those pearls in, I think it was back in the 1920s, 1930s, and put them in the vaults in the Bank of England. And I think it was around the 40s and 50s that various people in Arnmore who'd be, you know, I mean, you would still have the title, but I don't think anyone takes the title of King of Arnmore anymore. But the people who would have been entitled to it tried contacting the Bank of England, who said they lost the letter of authenticity. And the letter was addressed to the people of Arnmore and named the person it was given them to. And they claimed, and they wouldn't give. Now, they do admit they're the Arnmore pearls, but without the letter of authenticity, they won't return them. And these pearls were presented to the people of Arnmore by the Queen of Spain. So anyway, I digress. We're going back round. If you go round as far as Kincastle Chapel, and what's relevant about that is because several of the boats that foundered round by Kincastle, the wreckages that came ashore were used to build the church. So if you go to Kincastle Chapel and you go in, oh my, absolutely beautiful chapel, and you go in, all the wood inside is off ships from the Armada. They used the actual wood to build the ships. Now, there would have been bodies come ashore there, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean, it's stories that are passed down that a lot of the bodies that were there were buried in a mass grave, and that's what they built the church on top of then. You know, and that would have been.
You took me there before. I remember recently.
I did. So you go from there, and now that would be a mile and a half round to from Kincastle Chapel, a mile and a half, 2 miles round as far as Mullagerrig Beach, where the majority of the bodies come in. That's a big. That's why I
How
wanted.
many dead bodies are we talking? You said 12 survived, so you're talking 787.
I don't know. I don't know how many came on in England, but or sorry, Kincastle. But I know you're talking several hundred.
Yeah.
You're talking several hundred bodies. Like, you know, I mean, at least 300 bodies. Wow. There was 11 ships. There was so for the bodies that came ashore, they came across ashore. There is bodies buried down in Gortnasade. There's several buried down in a mass grave down there, and because there was no names, but the people buried them and put a cross up. And the ones that came ashore at Mullagerrig, there was too many, and there is a huge crater-like sand dune called Hell. That's what the locals used to call it, is Hell. And what they did is they dragged the bodies up into there and buried them en masse in a mass grave. So you are talking like several hundred people. And so now there was, including this, I can't think of their name off the top of my head. There was a count who led one of these ships, and his wife, the Countess, whatever her name was. I'll know it next. I promise I'll know it for Thursday. I'll know her name. I'll remember it because I've told this story before. I'm just terrible memory for names. But she wanted, it was 2 years later, she wanted to come and reinter her husband's body and take it back to Spain for a proper royal funeral. And so she led an expedition a boat that landed down at Cloughlass. And there was 200 women, and it was mothers, sisters, daughters, wives of the people that were lost. And they were all dressed in black, and they made their pilgrimage. First of all, they walked around to Kincastle Chapel, and they had a mass for the people that were lost there. And this woman, this countess, was completely dressed in white. That was her mourning clothes. All the others were dressed in black, but she was dressed in white. and she led the procession from Kincastle. Now this isn't speculation. This actually happened.
This did happen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this did happen. She led the procession then from there round to Mullagerog, which would have been a mile and a half, 2 miles round there. And there's a stone, I've taken you and Anthony to it. And it's called the Crying Stone because of all the women that came and they said mass, and all you could hear was the women crying because she couldn't reinter her husband because most of them came ashore half dressed, as it were. Nobody knew who was who. They were all buried together. There was no way after 2 years you could dig up a mass grave and single out one person. So they had the mass on the beach, and that particular rock that they had is either known as the Mass Rock now or the Crying Rock. But she's appeared many, many times before people have died. Like a proper, but it's not a whale. It's, you see this woman in white, and it's walking along, praying and crying.
Not an audible thing.
Yes, like sort of walking along, praying and crying, and so yeah, she's been around since the 1500s. The other one now was a couple of 100 years later, but she was a much more restless spirit, the one that was banished under the stone. So yeah, that was the two of them. I do have old pictures, but I will get pictures to show so we can show people exactly where we're talking about. It is such a haunted area. There's been so many disasters down at that beach. The first time I ever saw a man die was a Garda from Dunlow, a sergeant from Dunlow who was down swimming. And I remember myself and my aunt and my grandfather and his nephew, we were going to mass in Kincastle, and this woman running out onto the road to stop us. We were only like youngsters, and he was floating down in the water face first, and she couldn't reach him, but we kind of knew at that stage. There was also 5 students lost there a long time ago as well. They were here for an Irish college. That's riptides. It's the most beautiful stretch of water, but a lot of people forget it's not an inland body of water, it's the Atlantic. So when you go out about 20 feet, it's like a 200-foot drop. And a lot of people, it's like there's a whole area of Mullagerog Beach that all the locals know not to swim in. There's swimming pools, like wee pools of rock pools that you can go around and swim in, very safe. But there's whole areas because of the whirlpools and the eddies. One of the Armada ships that crashed actually off of Mullagerog got stuck in a sandbank about a mile out from the shore. Was visible right up until I think the 1800s. Yeah, it was visible. Part of it was visible. It was stuck in a sandbank. Part of it was visible. But I know that divers from around Derry and Belfast, etc., along with the Irish government, went out in helicopters in the 60s to try and dive for it. There'd been a big storm back in the early 20s that had obviously knocked it off the bank. So they wanted to dive for it because they claimed that it had all sorts of treasures on it. So that was the only way they could get down to it, was to helicopter down and dive, from that way, because they couldn't get in. It's surrounded by whirlpools and eddies. And you see it in the water. I mean, if you know how to read the water, you'd see it. Really dangerous stretch of water. They never actually managed to recover anything because it was too dangerous for them to get down into. I know there were several attempts made, but it was too dangerous. There was also the Ballymanus mine disaster there. And my grandfather was, we know he was saved from that because he had to go and get tea for his upcoming wedding. There was tea down in black market tea that had come in off a ship coming from Africa to Europe. I think it was Africa to, yeah. And wee boats had come ashore with tea and sugar and things like that. And there was such a novelty. And his mother had heard this particular day, there's a boat down at Knockastallar, go down and get tea. And he cycled down, and his friends, they'd heard about the mine that had come in at Mullagerog. A big 500-pound mine had come in at Mullagerog. There was over 200 people there initially looking at it, young fellas down kicking it and everything. And so him and his 3 first cousins, who were also his neighbours, but he considered them his brothers, they all wanted to go down too, but his mother was like, nope, you're going over to Knockastallar to get the tea. So he was like, don't you leave without me, don't you go down without me. So he cycled down to Knockastallar. He was down and back in an hour, and as he would have said it himself at the time, because he was fast and he was fit and he was eager, so he was down and back in an hour, but they had already carried on down to the beach. And he landed at the house, and he just, the minute he said, where did the boys go? And she went, they went away down to the beach. And just as he said it, the windows shattered, the shelves were rattling in the house. The explosion was heard as far away as Letterkenny, which is 45 kilometres, or 45 miles, sorry, from Mulladuff. And it was heard as far away from them. There was people's glass windows broken 5 miles from the actual site and things like that.
Mhm.
And him and his mum hopped on their bicycles and went down. And it was very sad because his best friend was the first person he came on, and it was his arm. And he knew it was him because he'd on his good Gansey. I always remember my granddad saying that. He said, I knew it was my best friend and my brother because he'd on his good Gansey. So there was 45 men from the ages of 14 to 32 from the, not 45, sorry, 19. In 1945 it happened. There was 19 men, all from the same village, Mulladuff. And Mulladuff to this day is still only a small village. So it was such a big disaster. So you have all these, so you've had hundreds of seafarers, hundreds of lost souls that come in off the Armada. You've had souls that have been lost in other wrecks. You've had the souls of the people of the Ballymanus mine disaster. You've had the souls of these children that were lost down there. You have literally a stretch of where it's seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deaths since the 1500s. And we don't know before that, there could have been just as many. It's a beautiful and rugged stretch, but an extremely dangerous stretch of water. So it's not surprising that it's haunted and that people see, you know, ghosts or spectres there. We're going to do a bit more when we get to go out to do the visiting. I loved seeing Pat Bunn because that's about what? That's about 12 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it must be because the camera was atrocious.
Yeah.
Terrible. And that must have been from a very old telephone. One of our first trips around. We made the film in 2010. No, 2012.
Well, but that was before the film, so it's at
That was
least 10 years ago. It was before the film anyway.
Yeah.
I remember going round and because we have an awful lot of things. It's like, that's just two stories of the Banshee and that's just in Mulladuff. And you'll say yourself, you know, you've done a lot more research all over the county.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everyone has a different story, but I mean, similar tales. You know, you can tell us some of the things that you came across whenever you were doing research for the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody had a totally different interpretation, which was our final conclusion of meeting people. Some people sort of it was always hereditary to hear it, so their mother hears it, so they hear it. Always audible to them, and always generally people said that it sounded like animal noises, but it wasn't animal noises, which I thought was interesting because people do know the sound of cats and they know the sound of foxes, like locals, but they're saying it was like the sound of.
Have you ever heard? Do you know? I'm going to say something, but I won't mention who it was. But I remember hearing this once, and it was the saddest, and oh my God Almighty, when I heard it, someone who had lost somebody, someone who had lost their husband, and when she went in to see the body, she didn't cry. It was a wail, and it came from her soul. That's the only way I can describe it, because it was the most pitiful sound I'd ever heard in my, and it would have broke your heart to hear it, but it didn't sound human.
Yeah.
It was just a wail. It was just a big, oh, you know, and I couldn't even replicate it. I couldn't try to because I'd never heard any the like of it before. Because I remember being startled. But yeah, that's so. It could be something like that. It's the wailing of the Banshee. Is it something that comes from the soul?
But one thing I did realize is that people really do believe here. Oh well.
Oh yeah.
In Donegal, anyway, in the rural outskirts, we went to the kind of the Blue Stack Mountains and met people that lived alone in tiny cottages and that kind of thing. So, that and fairies was another thing. People had some fairy stories which were nice. But
we have a lot of places here. Well, I haven't been to some of the places in Dore. It was my sister-in-law that was telling me about them, so I've got to investigate them. I know most of the ones in Mulladuff, and I've taken you up to show. So we're going to have to do a wee, as soon as we can get out and about, take you up to some of the take everyone up to some of the stones and the wee areas. There's actually a wee wood up in Rannihuel called the Hollow. It's down beside a lake that's, well, they claim it's bottomless. And then I was told by someone else there's no such thing as a bottomless lake. But I know that people in the 70s were down, and they only had the capacity to go down 2 miles, and they still didn't reach the bottom of this lake. So apparently around this lake, and not apparently, I was brought up believing it, my father and my grandfather, that this wee wood, the hollow, is where all the fairies go. And there's an echo down there. I used to take the kids down to see if we could see the fairies when they were wee and things like that. And it's like a beautiful spot. It's quite hard to get down to now. But again, that's something else we're going to have to go down and have a wee look at, just to show people. Because there's an awful lot of it here. And people don't, and it's bad luck if you knock a tree down, or it's like a holly tree. You're not supposed to knock it down without asking permission, but then most people prefer not to have the chance, the bad luck. So I've seen things that have been built around a holly tree, or built around a fairy ring and things like that.
If you're keeping an eye out and you're driving along, you'll see a field with one tree in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's people, because the amount of evidence there is of people that have had a string of bad luck. Now, whether you believe or not, it's coincidental. Yeah, exactly. Most people are like, no, I'm not going to chance it.
I went to the house in Falcara of a sort of herbalist man, and his house is built on a fairy mound, but he can handle it. He's into that kind of thing. He bought it.
They say if you leave a coin on the window for good luck, as a gift or as a present to the fairies.
Good omen, or it's a good
gesture.
Yeah. Good to know.
It is. It's just for anyone, like, sort of the film of the Banshees here, it'll make a lot more sense to people when we can show them some pictures of the areas that we're talking about. But unfortunately,
what I'd like to do is watch the film with you and do a kind of commentary, because there's a lot that people might have missed. It's and also it'd be nice for me to explain all of the, like, for instance, we got all of our props from a folk village, so they're all authentic.
They're all out of a museum at the folk village.
All out of the museum, yeah, exactly. From Glencolmkill Folk Village. Thanks to Margaret Cunningham over there. We shot it in a cottage, part of it in Ballybuffet. We shot locations in all different parts of Donegal. It's like a mishmash of loads of different.
It is, but it's all authentic, though. I mean, it's all sort of things that are from houses around that, around the same area, etc.
The entire county and many more counties. We just kind of focused on the one county, but the entire county has a rich connection to that kind of superstition and folklore.
Yeah, definitely.
And not that long ago, kind of somewhere between, it sort of mostly died out in the 50s, I think, in the 40s. In terms of day to day, I don't know about even like things like witch doctors and stuff. I don't know if you had. Do you ever have local?
We didn't have witch doctors, but I think, there wasn't a woman that didn't know what herb was good for this, or what what plant was good for this or that. But whether a sting, a cut, or but you see, everybody in the country knew that information. You'd have somebody like a midwife who was better at it.
I've heard of a few people who were brought to particular people to be cured of things.
Yeah, you would have got that. Not so much this part of Donegal. I'm sure there would have been ones, but not. They would have been much more afraid of the church here.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's not the case now, but in the 40s and 50s, very much the case, because I know, like, set dancing and shanachis, the storytelling. That's what a shanachie was, an Irish storyteller. And that was something that was done all over the country, but that was banned here in Donegal in the late 60s, early 70s. So people weren't allowed, so they stopped it, and people listened to the church and they didn't do it. I had never actually seen it here, apart from going to Garniel, going with my grandmother and her cousin and myself and my aunt, going with them visiting, and they'd sit knitting and telling all the stories. And I loved all that. But you wouldn't have got it in the pub. But I remember going on holiday down to Kilchima in Connemara. They had a festival down there, and you had young fella. You'd be sitting in the pub, and the next thing a young fella would come in and they'd clear the tables and chairs, and they'd set dance in the middle of the floor, and then someone would come in behind and and tell you a story, some sort of, and it was brilliant. Absolutely, I'd love to see that come back here.
Yeah.
Now they do have like the set dancing's come back, but not the same way it would have done it previously in Ireland.
It's sort of sporadic, or it's not.
Yeah, you would have like Kayleys and things like that now with organised nights, and people go and do their set dance.
Not with COVID. No Kayleys with COVID.
Yeah, no, there's none of that now at the moment. There's nothing. It's, as I say, we're back in a really strict lockdown now again. But something, it's that time of the year. It's a hibernation time of the year anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, the end of February, beginning of March. As long as we're all out of lockdown by the time spring hits us again. As long as we all behave ourselves and stay, and hopefully we'll be out of lockdown. I think with the vaccine, and I think with people, a lot more people, I think even people that didn't believe it the last time have maybe been touched by it this time. People that have known have got COVID, etc. So people seem to be adhering to it a lot stricter. And I hope that's the case. And if they do, I mean, it should be over and done with in a few months with any luck. Please God.
I just want to get out and use that app some more.
I know. As I say, I've joined Twitter, so I've kind of like sort of looked up lots of horror channels. So we need to start sort of having a look through the people there and see what is they're telling, and share some of our Irish ghost stories with them and things like that. Exactly. But I'm dying to get out and about and show people some of the pictures of the area of the places we're talking about. Like Mullagerog or Kerrytown, Kincastle, places like that. And just we will go over the film. I like the idea that maybe we talk over that, maybe do that for Thursday evening or something.
Yeah.
And give people a better insight to what the film. I mean, I think it's such a well-made wee film, and it's people appreciate it more if they know a bit more of the background.
There was I think about 40 people involved. So
well, do you know, I mean, it's see here, people understand the message here because people understand the stories of the Banshees, etc. But for people outside of here and outside of Ireland, I think we'll need to explain a wee bit more.
I think so. And it's not a bad thing. And also it's nice because it's the kind of thing that I know for a fact that the story behind everything's more interesting sometimes than just the film. The whole
I was actually on Facebook yesterday, and somebody was like, what's the scariest films you've ever seen, and made you think about them afterwards. And I was actually Twitter, and I pointed out it was The Omen. And someone else said, funny, I've just watched all three of them. Really, and I says, yeah, but I tell you what, the really scary bit of those films are, look into the making of them, because in the making of those films there was several accidents that they had filmed for the film that actually happened then to crew members that were killed in the exact same fashion. And 2 of the sets had to be exorcised 3 times. So that to me is much scarier.
Yeah.
So the background to what happened, I mean, the film is really scary. All 3 of them are really, anything to do with the devil, as far as I'm concerned, is really scary. But it's the actual making of the film, I think, tells a much scarier tale. Because definitely. So this, those kind of ghosties will work up to.
On our film, we did actually have a lot of tough times, to be honest. There was a back injury. Somebody's best friend died. Somebody who was working on it. What else? We had terrible luck.
Do you know what it is? You can't. I always say to people, I mean, if you believe in the paranormal, if you don't, you'll find some sort of excuse or connection. But if you believe in the paranormal, there's nothing you'll do that it doesn't affect you. I mean, you are supposed to protect yourself when whether it's films or short stories, whatever. You can't ignore the fact that things happen, and it is smart to protect yourself beforehand. But when you're sort of digging up stories like that, things will happen.
If you asked Aoife and Anthony whether you thought our film shoot was cursed, they would say yes. No, not extreme, not devil cursed, but no, we had a string of bad luck for sure, and everyone was kind of worked to their tether. I think the tone of the film also, because it's set in winter and it was shot in winter, and it's set in a destitute, freezing cold part of rural Ireland, and we were there during winter in the dark, in the snow, in the
Yeah,
freezing.
but when you're sort of, when you're delving into the paranormal, be it ghosts, banshees, whatever, you are stirring up activity. You're
Even
stirring up
on the most
activity.
basic level, on people's
Yeah.
sort of wavelength, they're sort of everybody was probably um, on that kind of
Well, I'm going to say as well that I know you didn't go into it protecting yourselves. You might do that now when you're doing films and things like
I
that.
won't ever
But
make
you
a film
didn't
again.
then. I know you didn't because I can remember saying, like, you do have to protect yourself.
I'm never
And
going to make a film again, so it's fine. But
you're not going to make any more films.
I work in animation now. I don't need to worry.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. But I thought you were going to make another film.
We'll see. Maybe a documentary here and there, but I'm not.
Yeah, I liked the one you were thinking of doing, do you remember? But that kind of fell by the way, the cow racing,
Oh yeah, I mean, I have ideas. I've
the
cows.
Bulgarian one.
Yeah, that's we'll see. Like that just seemed like a lot of money for.
I know, I know. Well, you see, I like, I enjoy the storytelling, but used to all the technical, and I know myself, like it's not
I have
cheapy to
another
get
one actually.
camera
I have
out.
a script I wrote that I'll tell you about very quickly because it kind of ties in with this stuff. I must find it. Maybe it's lost forever, but it's about it's a story about a man that hears a hum, like a continuous hum, and it drives him mad. And basically, he goes through this kind of madness, and then eventually believes that he is mad himself because everybody's telling him that he's mad. And then it turns out that he actually isn't mad, and that the home is a UFO.
All right, okay.
So,
I thought you were going to say tinnitus there.
no, well, for the whole film, you kind of doubt. There's like you're brought to a place where you doubt the
Hmm.
main character. First, you believe him, and then you're like, oh, maybe he is kind of mad. And at the same time, he's sort of being mad, and eventually comes to believe that he's not mad himself. And as that happens, then that's when the UFO appears. And for the whole film, up until that point, it's not really a sci-fi film or anything. It's a drama. You don't. It's about the home. It's not about
Yeah.
aliens. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I see. The Shining. Do you remember that film, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson? That's what I loved about that whole film to begin with. What scared me very much, because the whole way through the film, towards the end, you're still like, is this a descent into madness, or
Yeah,
is the place really haunted?
it's a
You know,
psychological thriller.
yeah, that's what's, it really sort of gets you like that. Is it a descent into madness, or is the place really haunted? And in the end up, we find out, yes, the place is really haunted. But I mean, Jack Nicholson is such a fantastic character, and he plays it. I mean, there's nobody does crazy like Jack Nicholson does crazy. We know
Mhm.
that from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But that's what I loved about that, because in The Shining, I remember I was working with a young girl several years ago, and her mother was taking her for, I don't have to worry about mentioning her name because I forgot it, but her mother was taking her to therapists and things like that. They thought she was a wee bit, because she'd been seeing things like in the sky or predicting things, and she was about 3 years old. And I remember sitting beside her, and I didn't really know her at the time. We were in a call center. This is several years back. We were in a call center, and I was sitting beside her. And I done that for a year. Do you remember?
Mm.
After I left the ferry, and I remember looking over, and there was somebody tapping her shoulder, trying to get her attention. Not a physical being, spiritually, but it was annoying. And so then it started nudging me, and then the end up, I thought, I can't keep
Okay.
ignoring this. I got up and I went over to her, and I went, there's somebody trying to get your attention. And she got such a shock when I explained to her. And she's like, what? You got that too? I says, yeah. She sat with somebody tapping your shoulder. I says, yeah. So and so that was when we sort of sat and spoke. And she's like, they thought that there was something. I don't know, her parents didn't believe in it. She didn't really believe in it, so she had nobody to talk to, to sort of help develop it. But she was really, really psychic, and a real natural, true medium. So
Mm.
she did have people trying to contact her, but because of all the things that had happened, our parents were like, took her to therapists. It's that descent into, it didn't occur to them that this was a supernatural or a ghosty thing that was happening to their daughter. It was, there's something wrong with her. There wasn't anything wrong with her. I remember I was due to go and meet a gentleman who is a psychic, and he's quite hard to get an appointment with because he's really, really good. And that's another story. But anyway, I had an appointment with him for about an hour. I said, he was going on to be a priest at one time. He's not, he's married now. But, and I said to her, I think it would do you the world of good to go and talk to him. And so I said, you can have my appointment. I don't really need to go. I was just going to have, like a chat. You can have my appointment. And she took it and took her mother, and it was the best thing they could have done, because he knew right away the minute she walked in that she had spirits round her, that they were
Yeah.
trying to talk to her.
Talking about
She knew,
cute spirits.
yeah, she knew she had them there, but she didn't want to acknowledge it because she thought the same as her parents.
Got it.
That's not real. There's nobody really there. This is my imagination. And the minute he said it, and then he explained it to her mum and things like that, it was such a weight off their shoulders.
Yeah.
And also, it made her life a lot easier once she was able to acknowledge spirit and say, not now, and to tell them when to back off. And, so it made her life, so it's that whole aspect of it for people that don't believe in the paranormal or don't believe in ghostly goings on. Whenever it's happening to someone, you wonder how many times people were committed to institutes down the centuries,
Yeah.
believed to have been crazy, that weren't, that maybe just had been mediums or spiritualists and
Or maybe
didn't realize they were.
the other thing is maybe as well, if you are quote unquote crazy, you can see you might be more open to seeing spirit as well. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be spirit. You'd be more susceptible to sort of possession and things like that. It's a weak spirit, they say. A
yeah.
weak spirit, a weak mind, is
Like
it?
for instance,
Makes you more
like
open, more
I've heard of
susceptible.
people with Alzheimer's talking to the dead and that kind of thing.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've heard of that as well. I mean, I think there's been an awful lot of incidences that nowadays there's a lot more information, and you've got your media and you can look things up. But even when I was young, you didn't tell people that you were psychic and things like that because
That's
you
another thing.
thought,
Yeah, people don't talk about these little things,
no.
or even the little coincidences like that happen quite often. Like you have a moment where you think your phone's gonna ring and it's gonna be your friend, and then it is, or that kind. Like
I've had just too many experiences, and I mean, I do cards when it suits me, and I do crystals when it suits me.
yeah,
I've never ever wanted to do it for a living, for the simple fact I don't have to prove myself to anybody. And I have done it. I've done it several times for people. I would do sessions, but it's yeah,
you've done
it's
some
it's
hard.
different maybe nowadays. As I say, if you're in the city, in the country, it's still a bit. They still look at you and just think, yeah, that one's away with the fairies. That's kind of how they'd refer to you.
Fair.
So, yeah, well, do you know what? I've enjoyed this catching up. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
swinging about all over the place here. I'm on the couch in the sitting room here today, only
Thursday.
because my kitchen table is completely filled with all my leftover Christmas decorations that's still to go into my attic. I'd
Uh,
like to say I was organized enough and had them all away, but I've half of them away.
yeah.
So yeah, so we'll be back on Thursday, and we'll have what we'll do is we'll go over the film, and you can point
Good.
out
We'll do a screen share and a chat, and
yeah,
yeah, that'll be great.
and get a bit of a catch up, and then start going on to a few more ghostly events, like maybe Kerry Town. We're going to have to do that.
And I'm looking
Kerry
for.
Town is something I'll enjoy explaining to people, and
I'd love to
that's
do the app in Kerrytown.
yeah. So I think that's a brilliant idea. So whenever like this, then the restrictions are lifted and
But
you're
they
able to
go down.
travel
They were
again.
lifted before. I made it up to Donegal one time between
That's right.
lockdowns, so hopefully now.
Yeah, well, hopefully the next time you make it up, that we'll be able to actually meet up and get out and do, you
Exactly.
know. even to take a few videos and pictures to show people of the places we're talking about, because the whole idea of us doing Haunted Hearsay to begin with, I mean, I know there's lots of haunted sites and lots of storytelling, but most of them are all either in the States or England or whatever. I mean, this country's filled with ghosts, filled with them. So, I mean, the whole idea is that we're going to tell you all the stories, people's stories from around these areas, first of all, before we branch out. Before we
Yeah,
branch
and
out.
more word of mouth as well than the official text, because we kind of are just going with the flow of what we hear from people, and that's the spirit of it, is more hear a rumor, then go look it up, as opposed to have something to say up front,
I watched a horror film actually there a couple of weeks ago that was made up in Dunleary. And I'm
Is
trying
it the one with the jellyfish?
no,
Oh, there's one where, is it jellyfish or octopuses?
it's not. No,
Fine.
it's a guy comes over from England to work in the woodlands, sort of with the trees or something. Him and his wife and their child, and they were told to stay out of this particular area of woodland. And there's these creatures that come out at night. It's actually really good and it's really scary. And most of it was filmed up around Dunleary.
Oh,
So I'll
interesting.
take you the next time you're here, take you up to show you where it was filmed, because that
And
whole area is really haunted
my
anyway.
favorite place up there
What's the name of the film? Oh my God, that's so annoying.
after the island. It's is it an Irish film?
It's an Irish made film, and I recognize some of the names in the film, so I'd say you'd know some of the guys that made it.
Maybe, yeah.
Um, but
There's
it's
another.
being middle aged and menopausal. My memory's so bad for names. I don't know, but then I'm blaming it on that. I was bad for names before that.
There's another movie. I can't remember what it was called. It's quite old at this point, maybe 10 years or more, and it was about these. It's set in Donegal, in a seaside town like Killybegs, but like a.
Oh no, that was down in Kincastle.
It's like a.
That was down in Kincastle. Yeah, that was made. They turned Kincastle. They put any of the buildings that were new. They put fronts on them, but most of the buildings were old.
And
But
it,
yeah, that was all filmed down in
like
Kincastle.
blood-sucking jellyfish that came out of the sea, and you had to get drunk to keep them away.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with another
Are we
film. There's
getting
quite
it?
a lot of films made here.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that one then. Well,
I
not
can't
say I'm
think of
not.
what it was
No,
called.
I'm not familiar with it. But I must look up now the name of the one I seen a couple of weeks ago. It's a really good film, really well made, and really scary. And I thought, well, that's not the ghosts that I know that are attached to that place up there, but it is still a haunted place that they were making the film in. Like, so
Yeah,
yeah,
very
we
good.
do we do get quite a lot. I mean, it's hard not to be inspired to do something ghostly when you come here anyway. There's lots of places that there's spooks about.
The movie
Anyway,
I was
so
thinking of is called Grabbers, by the way.
grabbers, right? No, I can't
Grabbers.
I know that. I'll need to look it up.
It's shite, but if you might like it.
Isn't it? Well, the one I seen there recently was actually really good and really well made and a lot more terrifying than I expected it to be. I love a good horror film, a good ghost story, and
Mm.
I can only watch them when Jamie's home. As long as I know Jamie's coming home, that's my youngest son. As long as I know he's coming home, I can watch them. But when I'm on my own,
Just too scared.
no, I watch them during the day, but not at night. My imagination is the biggest thing that terrifies me. But I'm in a wee cottage quite near the sea, and the nearest house is the next field over. So yeah, yeah. So I love them, but they terrify me. So I'm always, I'm always braver when there's somebody else in the house.
I like them, just not gory ones. I don't like blood
No, I
and
don't like gory ones. I love ones with a good ghosty story or a good, a good tale, something that's going to really scare the, bejesus out of you.
yeah.
Like I mean, like those films like The Shining and The Omen, they're terrifying stories because they're based. Well, The Shining wasn't, but the Omens were based. Anyway,
That era.
I'm not even going to get into them. Not even going to dabble because I'm here on my own. That's enough talk about The Omen and The Shining. Right. Okay. So Thursday, we'll be back Thursday and be a bit more organized. Hopefully, my kitchen table will be cleared. And I have photographs of Mullagerrick and Kincastle. I just must hook them out.
We'll take them out. See.
Yeah, and we'll show them after the
Yeah.
film and explain to people where we're talking about and just because I remember the 500th anniversary of the Armada was coming up, or has it? Have we passed it? Is it coming up or have we passed it? I can't remember.
Let me
But I
check.
remember thinking at the time, you know, I might contact Spanish royal family. Obviously, I wouldn't be like ringing up and going, King Juan, Carlos, how are you? Whoever it was you'd
Well,
contact. And
he
just,
abdicated anyway, didn't he, or something?
I don't really know, to be honest. I've never been to Spain. That's definitely on my bucket list. I have to get to. I've never been to Spain, Portugal, or Greece.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I just
so
read.
we'll be back Thursday. Yeah, thanks everyone. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe. It's all appreciated. If you've got something you want us to have a look at on your page, no problem. We're very happy to do that. And yeah, great talking to you too, Ben.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, thanks. We'll see you Thursday.
Bye.